So we ended last time in assembly view. We're going to create the bottom front frame tube. Let's go back to Part Studio. It'll be a similar process to what we did for the motor mount, except instead of having two bolt holes, we're going to have one because we're going to need a support bar to go between the two. And we might even create that support bar as well. Let's go sketch, and let's go to top view. So with the bottom front frame tube, we're going to need it to be 3/4 of an inch. So let's hover over the center, left click, draw that out. And it just needs to be a cylinder, so let's go up here, and now let's left click the dimension tool. Let's drag that away and go 0.73. Let's do 0.73 so we can make those threads a little bit smaller than what they're going to fit into. Let's close Sketch 9 out. Let's go over here to our navigation cube. Let's left click on the edge. Let's left click on front view. Let's go over here to sketch, left click on that, left click on the front plane, and you see that it shows up here and it also shows up here. Let's left click on the line tool, go through, hover in the center of the front plane, left click, draw that out, left click again. Let's go up here and click on the dimension tool. You'll notice that that method also cancels out the line tool. Left click, draw this out, and we'll want this to be 16 inches long. So it's going to be the same length as those motor mounts. Let's left click here on Sketch 10, close that out. Left click up here on the edge of the tube. Let's left click on the sweep tool, solid new, faces to sketch. We'll go down here to that circle that we created, left click on sweep path, left click here on the line. Now we've made our cylinder, left click on the check mark to close that out. And now we have our cylinder. If we do anything else, let's go ahead and center up that bolt hole that we need. It's going to be 0.51 so that we can put a support tube across. That's also something we could put the gas tank on, mount the gas tank to. So not only will it provide support to the frame, but it also provides a location for a gas tank to mount. Alright, let's go here to front view. Let's go over to sketch. Let's left click on the front plane. Let's go over and left click center point circle, hover over the center, and then draw that up, and then left click and draw it out. We'll stop right there. Let's go to the dimension tool, and we'll want that to be 0.51. Now we're going to go down and we're going to click on the center of that circle. I'll actually zoom in so you can see a little bit better. So I used the wheel to zoom in. I'm going to hold the wheel down to bring that up and then zoom in again. So I'm going to left click on the center of that circle. I'm going to left click down here at the bottom until that line highlights. And I'm going to come out here and I want that to be 8 inches. So we're almost in the middle. So it's 16 inches long and we want it right in the middle. Good. Now we've done that. Let's close out Sketch 11. Let's go over to isometric view. Let's click on that. Let's go ahead and put our threads on. Let's left click on the thread creator. And before we click the cylinder, let's go down here and go by distance. Let's go ahead and do these 1 inch. It's about all we'll need, because actually let's do that a little bit more than 1 inch. Let's go 2 inches there for the bottom one. Let's go 1.5 inches for the bottom threads. So we know this is going to be the bottom threads on the cylinder because it's right here. and then we'll do an inch for the other one. And I'll explain why in just a second. So let's come over, click on the cylinder. It's going to make our threads. Down at the bottom, you see those form. Close that out. Let's go back to Thread Creator. Left click. Let's go change the direction. So this will be at the opposite end of that cylinder. We'll go by distance. And this time we'll keep it an inch. And the reason we're going to make the top part of this frame tube only 1 inch long is because it can only go 3/4 of an inch into the top part of the front frame tube. Threads going horizontally across the top, so this can only thread so far anyway. Yeah, we've got to extrude Sketch 11, so click on Sketch 11, go up here to extrude. It needs to be solid, remove. 1 inch will go through this cylinder, so that's good enough. And let's do it symmetrically, and then close that out. So you can see now we have that on both sides. So I'll go back here. So I'm using the wheel to zoom in. I'm going to left click on Thread Creator, left click on that hole we just made through the cylinder, and now it's threaded. Now left click there on the check mark and close that out, and you can see now we have those threads. Perfect. Let's go left click on the cube up on the corner. Let's go down here. Let's right click and rename bottom front frame tube. Right click on part 6. Come up. Let's edit appearance. Let's give it a light blue. And let's close that out. Left click on that. And now let's turn this one off. Let's go over to our cube, left click on top, left click on sketch, left click on top view. So now our top plane, now we have our top plane selected. Left click on center point circle. Come down here, left click here, draw that out. Let's go up to our dimension tool, and this needs to be, let's go 0.48, just so that we can make sure when we create threads on it, it'll thread in pretty easy without a lot of prep. So it would have been a 1/2 inch, right? If you bought like a 1/2 inch aluminum pipe to make this, we're just making it a little bit smaller because we're going to make these threads when we 3D print, make it easier for those to thread in. All right, left click on Sketch 12. Let's go back, click on this bottom corner here. Let's go to front view. Left click on Sketch, left click on the front plane, left click on the line tool, hover over the center, left click, draw that out, left click again, come up to the dimension tool. Let's make this 16 inches long. Left click to close that sketch out. Let's go back. I'm using the wheel to zoom in. Left click on the sweep tool. Left click down here on our circle we just created. Left click on swept path, then highlight the line, left click it. Now we've made a cylinder. Make sure it's solid and new. Left click, close that out. Let's scroll out. We're going to need threads on both sides. Let's do 1 inch on one side and 2 inches on the other, so we could thread one side down without having to take it all apart. So left click, you'll see what I'm talking about once we start to assemble these parts, on why that's important to create more threads on one side if you want to disassemble it, take it without taking all the parts out. These are going to be the bottom threads you can see here. We want to left click, go down to distance. Let's actually make that 2.5 on the bottom. It'll give us a little bit more room to move. Then come over, select the cylinder. It'll calculate that out. Now it's got our threads there. Let's go over to the thread creator again. This time we're going to change and place the threads on the top part of the cylinder. Left click here, go to distance, 1 inch is fine. Come over, select the cylinder, and then close that up. Alright, that looks good to me. Copy this. So we're going to right click and go copy part 7. Copy here. It's going to give you the ability to move that part you just created. Once you see these lines, I'm just going to go over to the front plane so we can drag out our new part. Right there. I don't want them to touch. I want them to be slightly separate. And then once that's in the location I want, I'm going to go close out transform. So we copied it, we pasted it, we used transform X, Y, and Z to pull that away. You can see our first transform here. And you'll know you're successful when you copy and paste because you'll get another part. Now I'm not going to rename these yet because we still have 2 more to do. But I'm going to go over here to right view. And I'm going to hit left, or I'm going to left click on sketch. We're going to left click center point circle. We're going to come down here and hover. Then we're going to come up. And I'm going to left click and draw that out. We'll resize it in just a second. I'm going to go up a little bit further from that. I'm going to left click. I'm going to draw that out. Good. And now we can come over. We're going to left click on dimension tool, left click on the outer side of that, on the outside of that circle, and go 0.25. Alright, so that's 1/4 of an inch. Let me scroll in here real quick. We're going to back, select the dimension tool, select the outer part of that circle. This one's going to be 0.25. Now you notice how that moved down? We can just go here. We'll come down here, select that. And I think about 4 inches on this side because it's 16 inches long. And we'll do the same thing for this one. I'm using the wheel to zoom in out. Now I'm holding the wheel down. I want to make sure I've selected the center part of that circle and the top part of this. This doesn't have to be exact, but that'll allow us to bring that up 4 inches. Alright, good. Now, let's go back to isometric view. I'm going to close this sketch out. We'll go to isometric view, and this will make sense in just a second. We're going to go to extrude. So once you've selected solid, make sure it's new. So you'll notice here it's no longer in red. And then you can, let's zoom in. We've got to make sure it's connected, like it connects those 2 parts. It does on that one. I'm going to bring this down. Yeah, so it goes into that one as well. We just don't want it popping out the other side, but it looks like these 2 are now connected. Now we can left click on that. Let's go back to isometric view. We extruded. Left click on all 4 of those parts. And then right click down here. Hit boolean. Let it calculate. And then check. Now that is all one part. That's all part 7. Go right click again. Copy here. It's going to give you that XYZ again. We're going to go back to top view. Alright, now once you get at the distance you want, left click up here on the cube. Yep, that was front plane. So let's go sketch. We're just going to put 1 between both. So left click on sketch, left click on front view, left click on center point circle, come down here and hover, bring this up, Draw out your circle. Left click again. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to left click, draw this one out. Let's go up, left click on the dimension tool. I'm going to zoom in with the wheel. Before I do anything, oops, let me disengage this. What I want to do is move that around. So before you click on the dimension tool, get that centered. Left click on the dimension tool, left click on the outer part of that circle, go 0.25. I know it moved. That's okay. It did just what we did last time because we resized that. We'll zoom in on that again. I'm going to disengage the dimension tool and I'm going to move these around. And I'll probably take these up closer to center. So we'll go 8 inches for these because I don't want these right next to each other in case this creates a weakness in a 3D print by taking it off. I don't want it to create a weakness all the way around. I don't know that it will, but it might. Left click on the dimension tool, left click in the center of that circle we just created. Click at the base. Let's go 8 inches there. There we go. And it brought those both together 8 inches. Left click, close out the sketch. Alright, let's go down here to sketch 15. Come up, extrude, solid, new. That's what we want. You can see that is going all the way through, which we don't want. And I don't know. And let's change that. Let's go 0.5 and see if that'll be far enough. That looks good. And then left click and close that out. You need to highlight part 7, 8, 9, and 10. Right click on that, hit Boolean to make that one part. Boolean union, it shows the parts that are going to be merged into part 7. And then click on that, and now we have our part. Let's right click, let's rename. Let's call these support tubes. Let's right click and let's go edit appearance. Let's give these like a silver appearance. Good. For assembly view, we built these for printing. I may make one just for assembly view so we can import it in later on and assemble. Left click top view, left click center point circle, hover over the center until it highlights, left click, draw that out. Let's go up here, left click on the dimension tool, left click on the circle. This needs to be 0.48. Close that out. Let's go left click on that bottom edge so we can get to isometric view and then front view. Left click sketch, left click front view, left click line tool, left click after you hover, draw that line out, come up to dimension, left click, bring that over, and we want that to be 16 inches. Close that sketch out, left click isometric view, left click sweep, use the wheel, zoom in, left click, highlight the circle first, left click on swept path, left click on the line to create your cylinder. Should be solid new. Close that out. Drag that down, go to threads. I think we did 2.5 down here at the bottom. I'm pretty sure we did. That shows bottom. We want distance. We're going to go 2.5. 2.5. And then come over, click our cylinder, left click on that, come back to threads. This time we want the other end of the cylinder, so we selected start at opposite end. Come down, distance, we're going to keep it at 1 inch. Come over, select your cylinder, and now that part is created. So I'm going to rename this. Rename support tube for assembly view. So when we get to assembly view, we can use that whenever we need one of these. Right click, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to turn that back on. I'm going to right click on that. Let's go to export. We'll export this out. Your standard settings, STL, binary, millimeters, fine, downloads. We keep all that the same. Hit export. And then we'll bring that into our 3D printer. Let's go up here and go File, Import. Import our STL file. Let's go to Downloads. There's the new one that we just created. Let it import. Now we're going to get all these warnings because it's too long. It's 16 inches long. We only have a 10-inch cubed space for this build plate and for this printer. Let's go up here to Scale. Let's take it down to 50% scale. Left click and let's drag this around. Good. Let's go to Preview. See what kind. We shouldn't get any warnings. I don't think we'll get any warnings from this, we don't have any holes going through this surface. Good. Let's go to Print Plate. Again, this computer is not hooked to my printer, but if it was, you would see it there. You can also select what filament that you're using, and then we can send to print. All right. We also need to export part 6. Let's go up here, hit Export. Same settings. And we'll bring that in. Now you can print these separately, which is what I would recommend. So go File, Import, Import here. Go to part 6, Open. Go up, right click, scale it down to 50. Left click on this, and then you can move it around. Let's hit Preview. We might get a warning. We did. That's for supports, but this hole is so small, I'm not worried about that. We'll go to Print Plate, and you would see the printer here, but this computer is not connected to our printer, and then we would send to print. 3D print that we did. So we printed this off separately, and we popped it from there, and we printed off these other two. So we got that one separated. Let's go ahead and break this one loose. We just need one for right now. Clean that up a little bit. Just get those off. So these threads are going to be 1/4 inch because we scaled them down from a 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to clean up that thread a little bit. So I'm going to run this one all the way down. This is the side of the threads that we made longer. I think we made it 3 inches on the program on Onshape. I'm going to run this in. And the reason I'm doing that first, this was fairly easy to thread down, but if you were worried that you're going to put too much resistance, then you could thread it in first. Just don't push on it too hard because it will break. And remember, these threads will only go in 3/4 of an inch. Now I'm going to run this one down. I didn't really clean up the end of these threads very much. That's actually, I think I can get one more turn. So now you can kind of see why we made this one longer. Just makes it easier to assemble. You don't have to bend anything here to try to get these to fit in. So there's our front part of the frame so far. We're going to start working on the back part of the frame. We'll start up here at the top and work our way back down to the base.